I'm Matthew Petty, and let me suggest a good reason to donate. Your support spurs innovation at WUSF. One of the best signs of the difference you make, our new show, Florida Matters Live and Local. We air at noon, Monday through Thursday, and we take live calls from people like you. Let me give you a brief taste of what we're up to. Recently, we took a look at the growing doctor shortage in Florida. You know how hard it is to get a new primary care doctor. Sadly, the situation will get worse before it gets better. Scott Darius, Executive Director of Florida Voices for Health, joined me in the studio along with Jennifer Caputo, a practicing hospital doctor from Tampa. I asked Dr. Caputo about how she feels about one estimate that we'll need a whopping 18,000 new doctors in the state in the next 10 years to meet demand.
I'm scared to know what it's going to feel like in 10 years. So I'm a hospital medicine doctor, so I only see people when they come into the hospital. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what drives people there is their inability to get in with somebody in primary care and address issues early and up front. And what that looks like is overcrowding. You know, on any given day, RER could have up to 100 people who are waiting to be seen. Mm-hmm. Some of them already admitted, and there's just no beds in the hospital.
So what are they doing? They're just camping out in the hallways?
They're just camping out in hallways, in waiting rooms, chairs, recliners. And that's where we're trying to give care. It's not optimal for the patients. It doesn't make us feel good as their physicians. And we're right in Tampa. We're in an area where there is a lot of health care. So you can imagine if that's what it looks like here, you go out to any of our rural counties and things can get pretty dire.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, everybody is a patient at some point in their life, right? Whether you're a healthcare professional or not, what's your personal experience of trying to find a primary care physician or another kind of specialist?
Yeah. So it is hard even if you've been in medicine. For many years, I didn't have a primary care doctor. You know, I'm pretty lucky that I don't have a lot of serious medical issues. And so I just really went without. Mm-hmm. Now I actually use a concierge primary care doctor, which is a doctor who doesn't take insurance. You pay a monthly or a yearly membership fee, essentially. And it, as a patient, is a really wonderful experience. My doctor's very accessible. I have direct contact to her. If I need to, I can get in for same-day appointments. But it is a big out-of-pocket expense, and so that's not an option for a lot of people.
Do you mind me asking how much it costs?
I pay $300 a month just for me.
But you still got to have health insurance on top of that.
Right, and then I also have my health insurance. So anytime I go get labs or any other studies my doctor recommends, those do go through my insurance.
So, I mean, you kind of like paying for the privilege of having the experience of the doctor from back in the 1940s or, you know, up to probably the 1980s or something. I'm not sure when that sort of went away, but you're sort of paying for like what people thought a general practitioner would be or that experience of seeing their GP.
That's exactly what it is. You know, the appointments at my doctor are 60 minutes long. So if I go in there and I have one thing I want to talk to her about or I have 6 things I want to talk to her about, there's no rush. She's never running late to see me. It's never, we don't have time to get to that. My next patient's waiting. So we can really cover everything from head to toe, and I feel like that can be my go-to person. For most primary care doctors, they're trying to see people in 15 minutes and address all their health concerns in that chunk of time. And that's where that humanity feels like it gets lost.
Yeah. We're at 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. If you've had issues trying to find a primary care physician or maybe another kind of specialist, love to hear your story as well. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Scott Darius, Executive Director of Florida Voices for Health. I mean, what's your experience at a personal level of this doctor shortage? How does it look for you?
Sure. Within our family, my wife, who has had to go to the doctor, especially as she was carrying our first child a couple years ago, it was how long it would take to get appointments scheduled. And I think that's a pretty common experience at that point. But what we're seeing is this play out in any number of ways, including delivery, actual delivery. We know that in the state, we've lost 86% of labor and delivery facilities in rural areas over the last couple of years, and even in more areas, in more urban areas, this is happening now. Jackson Memorial down in Miami just closed their labor and delivery. So you're actually losing access points on top of that. while this the provider shortage itself is happening, you have less places for these doctors to actually stage at. And I think it's playing out in a number of ways. The story that comes to mind, obviously, is my wife, as she gave birth to our first child. You know, we live in Gainesville, 15 minutes from Shands.
Yeah.
It took us 2 days to be admitted because of all the rural hospitals that had closed in northern Florida and the number of people they had waiting to be induced for labor who like showed up at that hospital. And so just to get in line took us 2 days to have our girl.
So what sort of gaps is your group trying to fill, and how are you trying to do that?
When you look at the system holistically and you realize just how many things are kind of contributing to poor outcomes and a lack of access, there's not one kind of single solution that solves it all. I was talking to someone who runs an FQHC earlier this week, and they were talking about the struggle that they're having.
Sorry, who runs it? What?
It's a federally qualified health center.
Okay.
And they specifically serve rural communities in north central Florida. But the struggle that they're having hiring providers, right? You have to be able to attract these folks to come to these underserved areas. And there's any number of things that go into where a doctor chooses to practice. Right? You guys leave school with a bunch of medical debt. And so how do you want to earn to make up for that? And you don't necessarily earn that in rural areas. You earn just a little bit less. And so that reimbursements for providers and what they're able to get paid becomes a factor. People having access at all in places where you have a high number of uninsured, that's just less money being in the system overall and plays out, again, in any number of ways, poor outcomes and a lack of providers. And so just to say, there's any number of kind of levers that need to be worked on to really improve our system overall.
Yeah. Let's go to the phones. We've got Andrea on the line. Andrea, go for it. You're on the air.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. I'm finding right across the board, be it primary care, dental, even cosmetic surgery, I'm being given a long wait time for the appointment. Then I'm being told if you don't give us 48 hours advance notice to cancel, we'll fine you $50. But when I do get to the office on time, I'm waiting in a room for an hour at least, and then I get to meet a PA.
Yeah. And do you mind if I ask, Andrea, where are you based? Where are you finding
I'm
us?
in Parish.
Parish, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your call. We really appreciate you weighing in there. I mean, does that kind of tally with what you're seeing, Dr. Caputo?
Absolutely. So again, I practice in the hospital. So I'm often sending people home with, any number of specialists that they need to see to continue their care. And the number of people I see back in the hospital, because those wait times, we're talking 6, 8, 10 months to get in with certain specialties. And, people just can't make it that long. Their health can't sustain that long, and they're back in the emergency room.
Let's think about accessibility too. I mean, there's a lot of folks who can't access the care they might need, and there could be reasons like hospital closures and other factors about that. But what are they doing to get the medical care that they need?
One of the things that has become very popular are urgent cares. If you've kind of driven around town, you've probably seen, it seems like there's one on every corner now. That's really become kind of a catch-all for people who can't get in with their primary care. They don't really feel like they're sick enough to go to the emergency room and don't want to get that cost of going if they're not really having an emergency. But they can't wait 6 months to have their problem addressed. They have a problem now. And so that's one of the things that has popped up to kind of fill that gap, which I think is really helpful if, you have the flu and you need to go get checked out and make sure that there's not something more going on.
Yeah.
But if you have, diabetes, seeing a different person every time you need your insulin refilled, it's piecemeal care, and it's not going to be the same as if you had a consistent primary care doctor.
Right. Consistency, very important there. Scott, I mean, some towns are being proactive and trying to encourage primary care doctors to set up a practice there. What would you see? What would you like to see to have more of that happen?
I think anything we can do to incentivize yeah, providers being in places that are currently underserved is a big deal. But it's even if you have coverage, like the lack of security that actually comes with that, right? That you have plenty of people who are still, especially if you have a chronic condition, who are living in constant fear of, hey, if I do have something happen, will I be able to get the care that I need? And that feels unfair. So, yeah, whatever municipalities locally can do to incentivize people, I think is important. What I'll say is there may be two kind of factors in kind of designing whatever comes next is one, making sure that people get appropriate care, right? So if I stub my toe, that like those folks aren't ending up in emergency rooms, to really leave those spaces for people who have emergencies, but also comprehensive care. Yeah, the way we kind of lessen the load overall is just making sure people get what they need kind of all the time. Preventative care, right? To make sure that things don't blow up and suddenly there's more strain on the system that way. So the specific application of those ideas, I think, can be left to, the powers that be.
Yeah, but it's a complicated problem, and that is just one part of the solution, I think. Been talking with Dr. Jennifer Caputo, Tampa-based physician, and Scott Darius, Executive Director of the nonprofit Florida Voices for Health. Thank you both so very much for joining us. Conversation with Gilbert King is coming up in just a moment. Stay tuned for that on Florida Matters, live and local. I'm Matthew Petty, and one reason your support makes a difference is a new show launched right here at WUSF, Florida Matters Live and Local. It's a live call-in show with guests that airs Monday through Thursday at noon. We tackle timely local issues, share community stories, and even invite in authors like popular true crime writer Gilbert King. He's written a number of true crime books based on Florida cases. One, Devil in the Grove, won him the Pulitzer Prize. Gilbert King came by the WUSF studio recently to talk about his latest book, Bone Valley. It's about the case and eventual exoneration of a man named Leo Schofield, who spent decades behind bars. This is a taped segment, so no calls, but we will take your donations for the WUSF holiday fundraiser. Okay, I asked Gilbert King how the story of Leo Schofield landed on his desk.
It sort of came to me. I was out speaking about my book, Devil in the Grove. I was at a judicial conference, and afterwards I was signing books, and this judge came up to me and handed me his business card, and it just said on the back of it, said Leo Schofield, had his prison number, and it said, not just wrongfully convicted, he's an innocent man. And I remember thinking, like, judges aren't supposed to do that. You know, they're supposed to be for the integrity. There's certain ethical canons that they have to follow. They're not allowed to really talk about injustices within the state. And I kind of showed that card around, and people were kind of aghast that a judge had wrote that. And so I followed up with him and started talking to him. And he told me, you really need to look into this case. There's an innocent man who's still in prison. I can tell you exactly how they put him there. And that just got my curiosity.
I was reading too that he, or maybe I heard it in the podcast, he kind of just happened to wander into that seminar you were holding, right? He wasn't even supposed to be there.
No, he saw my name, and I think he was thinking I was Gilbert Gottfried, and he was like, "What is a comedian doing here?" You know, for a law conference. Right. But then he got trapped in the front seat and couldn't leave, and then he listened to it and he said, "Wow, I got to get this guy for Leo's case."
Mm-hmm. There's a moment in season 2 of the podcast where the man who confessed to the murder, this is Jeremy Scott, calls you from prison, and you just happened to be with Schofield at the time. Two men agree to talk to each other, which seems like a stunning turn of events. And I want to ask you about that. But first, let's just listen to some of what Schofield had to say to Jeremy Scott.
Jeremy, I want to tell you something. And this is coming from a long time of prayer and, you know, just a lot of thought. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to thank you for telling the truth. I want you to know that I forgive you with all my heart.
What was it like to be a fly on the wall for that conversation?
I mean, it was absolutely surreal. You know, Jeremy had been calling me for the last couple of years, and, you know, sometimes he'd get locked down in solitary. I never knew when he was going to call. And Leo had just gotten into a very serious motorcycle accident and was kind of laid up in bed, couldn't bear any weight. And so I went to visit him in February, and as I was there, Jeremy called. And it was kind of this awkward moment. Do I take this call? Leo said, go ahead and take it. And I just asked Jeremy if, he was okay with it. But Leo was here. Do you want to say a few words to him? And I'll just tell you, Jeremy had told me over the years that, you know, he said, one day I just hope to sit down at a table with Leo and tell him I'm sorry for what I did, not only for killing his wife, but for ruining his life. Leo spent 36 years in prison for this crime, always maintained his innocence. And here he was with a moment to talk to Jeremy, the man who's forensically tied to the crime scene and who confessed. And, it's just Leo being Leo, to be honest with you. He's an extraordinarily graceful, gracious person, very spiritual. And, Jeremy was just showing so much remorse along the way. You know, I think he felt like at one point he said to me, I go to bed at night and I see the faces of the dead bodies that I killed. I believe he's killed at least 4 people. And it was weighing on him, and especially this one, because he knew that another man was paying for the crime.
We're talking with Gilbert King about his latest book. It's called Bone Valley. It's about the story of a man who was locked up in prison for more than 35 years for a crime he didn't commit. He was accused, found guilty of killing his wife, Michelle. Another man later confessed to the killing, and Leo is now out and seeking exoneration. You can give us a call if you want to have a bit of a chat with Gilbert. Maybe you've got an idea for the next book he should be working on or his podcast. 813-755-6562 is the number, 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Now, there is a bit of a plot twist, right? Because I was reading that just a week or two back, Jeremy Scott died in prison. He wasn't that old. He was in his mid-50s, I think, of heart failure. What does that mean for Leo Schofield's bid for exoneration?
Well, I talked to some lawyers about this, and it actually doesn't really have much of an effect. I mean, there's a law that says, confessors, if they've passed on, you can go back to tape-recorded statements or affidavits or any kind of testimony they've given. So I don't think it'll really have that much of an effect. But it was kind of a profound moment, sort of came out of the blue. Just 2 weeks ago, we learned that Jeremy Scott had passed away, and it was interesting to see Leo's response to that. He one of the things he'd always said was like, I had to learn to forgive him because this bitterness and anger was going to destroy me, and it was destroying him in prison. And he's a very spiritual guy, and he had to really just pray and realize the only way for him to survive was to just let go of this hatred and bitterness at the man who's not only killed his wife but caused him to be in prison for so long. And he was able to do it. And since then he's shown a lot of empathy for Jeremy. It's probably the only person in the whole story who has real empathy for Jeremy is Leo, which I think is pretty extraordinary. And he took the news of Jeremy's passing pretty hard, but only as a human being, I think. He says, I don't have the ability to forgive for Michelle, his wife's family, or others, but I had to do it to save my own life.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it sort of gives a lot more weight to that conversation that you were witness to between those two men, because it sounds like it was really important for them to have that conversation, at least for Leo to say, I forgive you, and for Jeremy as well to kind of hear that from him. Yeah,
it really meant a lot to both people. I mean, even Leo said, afterwards, like, I, always wanted to forgive him, but like today was the test when he called and I had to do it. Matthew, what's really strange is that, after the news of Jeremy's death, kind of oddly enough, Jeremy's family is sort of reconnected with Jeremy over the last few months. And, they were very moved by the story too. And they actually asked Leo if he would deliver the eulogy for Jeremy Scott.
Oh, wow.
Which we did last week. And, just to see this happen, being in this, private memorial service where it's just, family members and me and Leo, and just to hear Leo's words, he gave a great gift to that family and acknowledged that, without Jeremy's confession, he don't think he'd ever be out of prison.
I got to ask too, though, about, the other family in the mix here, Michelle's family. Well, what do they say about all this?
Well, it's interesting enough. Michelle's brother, Jesse, was really 14 at the time. He didn't really know too much about it. But over the years, he started doing his own investigation and started looking into it. And he ended up supporting the parole for Leo and actually writing a letter to the parole commission saying he didn't have confidence in the conviction of Leo Schofield. So he's really come around. And, it's really just interesting to see all these people from Leo's past sort of reconnect with him in this way. And he's getting a great deal of support from Leo, from Michelle's brother.
But there are others in the family who aren't happy with the turn of events.
There's another brother who's out on the West Coast, and he actually testified against Leo's parole at the time. So, yeah, they're a little bit split on that.
Bone Valley is a great name for a book. Why that title?
Well, I'd never heard of it. And I spend a lot of time in Central Florida, and I talk to people in that area who they say they've never heard of it. But basically it goes back to the Peace River, and when they were over 100 years ago, they were dredging it, looking for ways to make a canal across the state. And by just digging in a little bit, they started finding all these shark teeth and skulls and just so many megalodons and odd, creatures from 1 million years ago when Florida was underwater. And so because they found so much of this, they began to call it Bone Valley. It's mostly known for what am I thinking of? The mineral in there, potassium? No, it's not. What am I thinking of? I'm
not
blanking
sure.
out on it. But it's a fertilizer center. Okay. And it basically, I think 3/4 of the world's fertilizer was coming from Polk County at the time. And the phosphate mines, that's the word I was listening for. But yes, but right in those phosphate mines, in the sand, they were finding all these mammals. So it became known as like Bone Valley.
This is your third book set in Florida. What is it about Florida that keeps you coming back here?
It's a really interesting. Mainly, I go out and do talks, and I'm being like proximate in the area, and people always tip me off to these stories. And they're really good stories, and they're stories I'd never heard before. So I don't know. I think of this just area of Central Florida as just being so rich in these kind of stories that are really not well known to the public. And in particular, this case was not really well known. I think a lot of it had to do with local media coverage. Didn't really make it seem that interesting. It seemed kind of an open and shut case. But when you dig into it and look into it, you start seeing all sorts of signs of prosecutorial misconduct and all sorts of different things that make it interesting for me as a writer to really delve into it. So I don't ever want to leave Florida. I feel like there's just so many people here that help me, and the sunshine laws make it really accessible to me. So I really don't want to leave Florida for any of my stories.
You've got a bit of experience in your past in Florida too, though. I mean, you went to USF.
I did attend USF back in the early 80s, and I'm proud of this school. They elected me to the Alumni Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, which was really exciting.
What were you studying?
I was studying English, and I wanted to get into English and be a writer, but I moved to New York and got put into a photography department. And for the next 20 years, I was working as a photographer, and finally decided, I want to get back to my real true love, which was writing.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you've written a lot about kind of injustices and the justice system in general, both in Florida and just kind of generally. What did you learn from telling this story?
Well, a lot of the cases are different. I think when I look back at the Lake County stuff, most of the point, it was law enforcement that was the problem. You had a really powerful sheriff who was, convinced that he was going to railroad these innocent men. In this particular case, in Leo's case, it's more of the prosecutor's office in this case. I thought the police handled this entire case pretty ethically. I think there's a few areas of incompetence, but you could probably find that all the time. But I thought the Polk County Sheriff's Office did a really good job with it. And I think there was a reason that they charged nobody with this murder for 15 months. I don't think they really had a case. It was only until this one prosecutor, John Aguero, entered the case, and he was sort of known as the king of like circumstantial cases and putting things together. And I think you get to see a lot of manipulation that he was doing with the witnesses in order to build his narrative.
Mm-hmm. I know you've been touring around talking about this book. Have you had other folks come up to you and say, I got a story for you?
Yeah. I mean, some of them I've heard before. Like there's stories like that, you should look into this case. I used to get that a lot from the Dozier boys in the White House.
Sure.
I used to get a lot. And I said, that one might be even too dark for me. So that was a really tough one. But yeah, I do get a lot of tips about certain cases to look into them. And a lot of times from lawyers and judges who really know these cases. And so I really value those leads.
Yeah. I mean, Judge Scott Cupp, this is the person who kind of set you off on this path.
Yeah.
Have you maintained contact with him? You kind of keep in touch?
Oh, absolutely. He comes out with me on certain book talks, and he'll sometimes talk about the law, and we'll have conversations together. He's a really admirable man. Became a friend of mine. He not only tipped me off to this case, but once the podcast came out, he was so moved by it and just said, you know what, I'm just going to resign from the bench. I want to go back to being Leo Schofield's lawyer and represented him for parole, which, the New York Times did a feature story about this. It was a really national news story. This man who gives up his seat on the bench to go represent a convicted murderer in Florida. And he did that and was very successful. And Leo was able to get parole finally.
In the last few seconds here, you got another podcast up your sleeve, or is it back to writing?
Looking at a few ideas. I really love podcasting a lot, and the storytelling is just so different from writing. So I'm really enjoying both. So, but no ideas yet.
Gilbert King's new book is Bone Valley, a true story of injustice and redemption in the heart of Florida. It's about a Polk County man, Leo Schofield, who spent 35 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. You can find the Bone Valley podcast wherever you get your podcasts. That was Pulitzer Prize-winning author Gilbert King on Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty, the host of the show. Usually, we ask you to call and join the conversation. Right now, though, I'm asking for your calls to support this show and all the valuable programs on WUSF. Hi, I'm Matthew Petty, the host of a somewhat new show here on WUSF, Florida Matters Live and Local. If you ever wonder what your donations make possible, well, this show is one of the results. We talk to local people about local issues, and we take calls from all over the Tampa Bay region live Monday through Thursday at noon. Florida Matters Live and Local isn't just about important wonky stuff. There's plenty to delight in this holiday season. For example, we recently took a sober look at mocktails, non-alcoholic drinks to keep you in the holiday spirit without embarrassing yourself at a party. Sober mocktail influencer Abby Conrad joined me. Remember, this is a taped segment, so no call-ins, but we will take your calls giving your support for WUSF. I asked Abby how she became a mocktail evangelist.
I had a kind of a tumultuous relationship with alcohol, and I'm very blessed that over 5 years ago, I got sober. It was a life-changing decision for me at the time. Back then, I wasn't sure what my life would look like socially, because I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced was that alcohol was just woven into just about every single social setting. And I found that gap, that lack of inclusivity, the lack of alcohol-free alternatives in social settings really sparked something in me. And that's why I started NA Tampa Bay, my Instagram account. That's just flourishing right now, I think.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to start this account to document and to share where to find actually good NA cocktails in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah.
Not just soda waters and lime, not just, juices mixed together and calling it a mocktail, but actually quality, complex, non-alcoholic cocktails. And so I'm having a really fun time with that. I think my Instagram account is not about convincing people to stop drinking, but it's just to open the menu and the mindset and to try different things. And to, I think that, you really deserve to have a great non-alcoholic drink in your hand, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
Whether you're at a football game, at a nice restaurant celebrating a birthday, or at a cocktail bar, celebrating, your friends and stuff. I think that you deserve to have a really great cocktail in your hand.
So what do you think it tells you about the thirst, I guess you could say, for this kind of experience in Tampa Bay, that you do have this following, that you're sort of seeing this interest in the area?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are getting curious about their relationship with alcohol. I think that there's less shame around your options to not drink. I think there's more support. And I think as a Zero Proof ambassador, I like to say that I champion the brands, the drinks, and the people that are creating a wonderful space for the NA community.
Yeah. Now, so you've brought in a little cooler bag there. What do you got in here?
Absolutely. So in my cooler bag, I have some of my favorite beverages that are all non-alcoholic. I'm going to start with my absolute favorite.
Yeah. It's
from Groovy. This is called the Dry Secco 2.0. It's a revamped version of their Dry Secco.
So this is like a non-alcoholic wine.
Yes, it's a de-alcoholized white wine. To go through the de-alcoholization process is actually quite a lengthy and expensive process. You're taking a beautiful glass of white wine and you're removing all of the, the good stuff, I guess, from it. So I love when brands like Groovy do take time with that process and do add in some more of those botanicals and that effervescence. And it's one of my absolute favorites. I hope you do get to give it a try.
Yeah. So, I mean, do wine aficionados, do they kind of look down on this? What are you doing to this delicious wine, taking the alcohol out of it?
No, you're seeing absolutely some incredible winemakers. There's a wine company actually out of California. It's called Shirley. And he started out as a winemaker.
Yeah.
And now he's delved into this de-alcoholization process, and it's absolutely flourishing. You can actually find a glass of Shirley at Slim Charmer here in St. Pete.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is that a twist-off?
It's not, but I brought a can opener.
Okay. Should we give it a go?
Would you like to give it a go?
Now, while we're doing that, how do you get out of being the designated driver?
I take pride in being my family's one and only designated driver. I think it's a privilege, actually, that I get to hold on to my sobriety. But I think there's so many restaurants and cocktail lounges out there now that make being a non-drinker possible. Places like Willa's, La Satima Club, Alter Ego, Perry's Porch, Wild Child, Slim Charmer. These places are adding another layer of hospitality to their menu, and they're including the non-alcoholic community into their atmosphere, because I truly believe that non-alcoholic beverages deserve to be in beautiful spaces and beautiful places, and that you should be able to pop that bubbly of NA champagne wherever you are.
Is this is definitely there's no alcohol in here, right?
There is no
'Cause
alcohol
I'm getting
in
some
here.
I'm getting some bouquet from it, right?
Oh yeah, you get some floral notes, some botanicals. It's
Yeah.
really delicious.
All right, let me try this.
All right, let's go for it.
Okay, well, cheers.
Cheers. Here, let me pour a little bit.
And this is a sparkling wine.
Yes, it's from a women-owned brand called Groovy, and they are making some incredible dry seccos, rosés. They taste just like the real thing.
Yeah, that tastes authentic.
Right?
Not that I'm a wine
delicious.
aficionado or anything, but that's pretty good. That's pretty
Are
refreshing.
you a beer person?
I do like
You
beer.
like
yeah.
beer?
I like a
Well,
beverage.
I have a crisp, cold Athletic Brewing IPA for you. If you want to try it.
Yeah, let's give it a go.
Ready? Here you go.
So let me ask you this, because I've seen Athletic in grab a different cup for that actually. I've seen Athletic in the grocery store aisle. It seems like this is a brand that's really taken off. I mean, are you seeing more options for folks?
Oh, absolutely. I think brands like Seedlip, Athletic Brewing, Ritual, I think that they paved the way for the non-alcoholic industry to just flourish. You're seeing them readily available at grocery stores, at convenience stores. I mean, you name it. I remember Publix didn't used to have any non-alcoholic options, just some beers, but now they have some non-alcoholic spirits in their aisles, which is so wonderful to see.
Let me try this anyway. All right, so yeah, that definitely smells like an IPA. It's got that real kind of kick to it. Let me just give it a swig. And that actually tastes like the real deal. I'm pretty impressed. Okay, so is this kind of a generational thing? Because I mean, it does seem like there is more of a kind of a push for folks who say, look, I want to go out and have a good time. I'm enjoying, being out and about, going to bars, but I'm just leaving the alcohol by the wayside. Is it a generational thing, do you think?
I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I think it's definitely a movement. I mean, you're seeing my generation, the generation that invented Power Hour, that was Four Loko, Now they're shifting away.
Yeah, Four Loko. Remind us what that was. That was like a combo of alcohol and caffeine or something?
It was a pretty deadly combo, if you ask me. But, that was my generation. We grew up. Drinking was woven into every single aspect of our life. And I think you're seeing a lot of people my age, trying to shift away from that.
Yeah.
They're looking more about alcohol-free alternatives. And I think, the newer generations, they're not even thinking about alcohol. But do they want to still have a great cocktail at dinner or out at a bar? Absolutely. And you're also seeing other beverages like adaptogen beverages, THC-infused beverages that are also becoming huge in this market.
What is adaptogen?
Adaptogen beverages are like lion's mane or mushrooms, some stuff like that.
So different kind of herbs and things.
Yeah, different kind of herbs that have different effects, calming, brain power stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking too, Abby, so 5 years ago when you started your kind of sobriety journey, that was around the time of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So you would have been coming out of the kind of peak pandemic without the crutch of alcohol, right? Was that a scary moment for you?
It was terrifying, I got to tell you. But it's still the best decision that I ever made. It was peak pandemic. We were just stuck inside. We were living in DC at the time and, stuck inside and having margaritas every single day. And that's when I think my problem really hit rock bottom, which that's why I'm also kind of grateful for the time that we were in, because I was able to get the help that I needed.
Yeah.
And I know not everyone has that opportunity. But ever since then, I mean, it's just been from here on up, nothing but clear minds, blue skies. I mean, it's just the best decision that I've ever made.
Yeah. I wonder too about the sort of social network that goes around drinking, because it is sort of taken as a given for some folks, right? That you're going to be out and about, you're going to have a drink in your hand.
Yeah.
And we heard from Mike Smith, who owns the Urban Flow bottle store in the St. Pete area. I think there's two of them now. But he was saying that he lost a lot of friends when he decided to ditch the drinks. How did it go for you?
I lost a lot of friends. I had to cut a lot of people out. But honestly, I think the overall feedback that I've gotten from friends and family and, new friends, new relationships that I've had has been nothing but overwhelming support.
Yeah. You found a new community, though, a new tribe?
Absolutely. I found a village. I found a tribe. I'm also a mom to a 2-year-old. And it's really great, too, to experience this, alcohol zero proof movement, being a mom, too. You're just always so clear-minded. You're not waking up with a hangover, and you have, a wonderful support group.
Do you think sobriety has changed the way you view alcohol and its role in social situations? Like, kind of thinking about things now, 5 years later, like, did you realize how big a deal it was, or how important it had been to sort of socializing?
I was absolutely shocked at how deeply woven alcohol was into every single social setting. If you go to a restaurant, where do you go to restaurants for? To celebrate things, to enjoy the moment. Every time that we would go to a restaurant, I would feel a little awkward, honestly. I'd be like, what am I doing here? I feel like I need to have a drink in my hand. This is crazy. And so now I'm really just so grateful that a lot of restaurants and a lot of bars around the Tampa Bay area are embracing the non-alcoholic lifestyle and including more NA options on their menu. Because I think that sober does not mean boring.
Yeah, and is it a surprise? I mean, because you haven't been doing this for long. Are you sort of taken a little bit aback by the level of support you're seeing there?
I mean, the support has been absolutely astronomical, and it's been so fun. And I think that that's also a testament to what a great community this is, what a great time it is to be where all these non-alcoholic beverages are just flourishing and booming. Because I think that these beverages deserve to be in beautiful spaces and to be celebrated. What
do you recommend for folks who are interested in giving this a go?
Take it one day at a time.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Take it one day at a time. Maybe instead of drinking, your at night, your glass of Chardonnay, swap it for a groovy dry Secco. I think that would be perfect. That's all you need, one day at a time.
That was Abby Conrad, an expert on mocktails, non-alcoholic drinks that keep the party going. Abby was one of dozens of guests who have met in the past few months on Florida Matters Live and Local. And it is your support that makes it possible. I'm Matthew Petty, host of the show. Call in now and make a sustaining gift for public radio for our community and for shows like Florida Matters Live and Local.